Hi everyone, I just saw this video which I'm going to reference in my examples in the description section, where this woman has been called in into a talk show related to therapies and advice related to some life challenges that people are facing in their life. And in that show, she talks about how she has been in a marriage of 10 years where she has been financially abused, sexually abused, psychologically, emotionally abused. I believe she said sexual abuse, but if I'm wrong, please forgive me. But she has been physically abused also one time. And she said that the time that she was abused, she has not filed any complaints, which is the pattern of anyone who goes through any abuse. You do not, when you are going through a abusive situation in life, sometimes you do not realize that you are being abused, like the Giselle Pellicott case, where it took her possibly over 10 years. 10 years of her abuse has been discovered right now, but that doesn't mean that only 10 years of abuse was going on with her. Actually speaking, more than 10 years of abuse and rape was going on in her life, but the 10 years were documented by a perverted husband and other perverted people, and that's why 10 years evidence is available for the police. And this is how abuse is for many men, women, and children when they are abused at different levels by some perpetrator or a group of perpetrators. Because when someone wakes up to their abuse is not the day when the abuse actually started. The abuse could have started 10 years back, 20 years back, 30 years back. It could have been even lifelong for some people. But the day you will wake up to when you were abused, or something abusive or something abuse like was present in your life, can be many years or decades after you went through that incident. And unfortunately, the laws globally do not address this as a factor of determining many social, legal, financial, and other aspects of living that rules and governs our life in the modern world, which is a problem zone which people who are working in these fields need to wake up to resolving, because not everyone is your average abuser. In this narration of this woman itself, she has said specifically that for 10 years she didn't have any financial control of her assets. And she actually tells in the video that she will have to break the lease of her apartment to leave. They have been renting an apartment. So, even with the lease of a simple apartment, even though she doesn't have too much of financial access to her own finances, abusers do this to women. They ask women to sign on documents where, because you're a trusting partner, because you're a loving partner or a caring person or a fair partner, all these kind of women get trapped into abusive situations by their partners simply because they were trusting, willing to trust the fact that someone wanting to marry you, someone being married to you, will take care of you at the basic level a human needs to be taken care of. This is what the whole foundation of marriage or any family life or any long term life with a partner is supposed to be originally. But even though what is ideal situation, what is supposed to be the ideal situation you should have with a partner, when you fall in the traps of the abuser, everything that is supposed to be normal is not normal in with that person. So that's why, if normally a wife might take up a lease of an apartment while the husband might take up the lease of a car they are buying, or leasing a car, whatever it is, ideally speaking, in a balanced marriage, people can divide finances, take financial responsibilities, allocate financial resources in a way where a balanced distribution of it is happening. But with an abuser, a balance is hardly ever there, never there. It's actually in the form of balancing situations of life. The abuse lies in those balancing phases of life or balancing situations that should be there. But actually, it was a coldly calculating move by an abuser to trap you into a life with them. Sometimes it's a cold calculative pattern, especially if that person has been abusive towards many people for many years of their life, and they have got away with doing that abuse. So those people have become a, like, every one of us, if you've read some of Malcolm Gladwell's book, when the book talks about it just takes people 1,000 hours to master something, the same thing that a person, if you're mastering something good, like if you want to become a cook, you can become a master at cooking after cooking for 1,000 hours. If I was a pharmacist, I mastered this as a pharmacist, that some days after having counted thousands of pills for so many years of my life, me and my technicians, some of us got so used to counting 30 counts of certain pills from certain medications that every time we would pour out the medication from the bottle, intuitively our muscle memory has gathered this memory in our muscles, such that some days very accurately we could pour out 30 tablets of a particular medication. Especially if I have been pouring out that medication again and again for many years, my subconscious has developed and my muscle memory has developed that skill to pour out 30 pills. It would happen, it would bring us so much fun and joy some days when we would count out immediately the exact number out from a bottle. But like that, this is the simplest muscle memory that developed just by my hands. The muscles of my hands has developed it. Subconsciously, it knows what is the weight of 30 tablets. So and how much of the bottle needs to be tilted. Now, if in those thousands of hours of doing that work, if the company changes the packaging, if the company changes the number of the size of the pills, all of this will also determine, now my muscle memory will not be there. So if something has shifted in that company, that also a person who is doing a mindful work can start observing that, as well as to where the problem zone lies or where the shift has happened. So for me, if I'm an observant person, mindful person, or a very obvious change has happened, if I was counting out 30 pills of a thyroid medication regularly for a while, and I have that muscle memory over thousands of hours of doing that work, now suddenly if the manufacturer has obviously changed the packaging, like earlier the packaging was in a fat bottle and now instead of a fat bottle it is a much thinner bottle, so obviously the size of the bottle has changed, shape of the bottle has changed, all of which will now again need another 30,000 hours of muscle memory practice for me to get attuned to it. And if a slight degree change was made, it might not need me 1,000 hours, but if a great degree change has been made, it will take me another 1,000 hours to master that muscle memory again. And considering the fact that my health stays safe, everything about my health remains the same, everything about my functional capacity remains the same. Because another place where the same muscle memory will get impacted is if I'm aging and I'm having some muscle related weaknesses happening in my body, if poisoning is happening, where because of poisoning from pesticides that is developing in my body, I'm getting tremors as a result of a consequence of those exposures, all of which will also determine again that instead of pouring 30, I could be pouring now 35, even though for many years I had continuously known nothing else has changed except my body's functionality has changed. So that can also arise when a subtle thing. These two are the very obvious places where the change will arise, but there are also many subtle places where the changes can arise, one of which could be that earlier the tablet machine that they had could make tablets of, let's say, 1 milligram size, but now the tablet machine that they have is not making a 1 milligram tablet. It has changed, some specifications have been changed in the tableting machine. So now the tableting machine being different, the formulation changes could have been made, or multiple level changes have been made, resulting in now the tablet now being, instead of 1 milligram, it's a 1.1 milligram tablet. So because now the tablet size has changed, again, will I be pouring, if I assume that, I don't know that the tablet has changed, but my muscle knows how to pour 30 milligrams of tablets, right? If I'm counting out 30 tablets of a particular drug and they are all 1 milligram in weight, I should be, when I'm pouring out, based on what my muscle knows, when I pour out, 30 milligrams is essentially being poured out. And when it is a 1 milligram tablet, how much will I pour out? I'll pour out 30 count. But now if it is not a 1 milligram tablet, it is a 1.1 milligram tablet, now I'll be pouring out 30 milligrams, but it will be lesser than do the maths, because I'm not that great at maths to immediately give you the mathematical solution of how many tablets my hand will pour. But if you're doing such an experiment with some people working in a pharmacy who have worked for over 1,000 of hours and whose physical functionality is still the same and stable as it was before, you will see that they will consistently pour out 30 milligram related tablets or somewhere near the 30 milligram range, but now the quantity will be lesser because each tablet size has turned into 1.1 milligram. So I hope this made sense. So this is how also a pattern develops in an abuser as well as an abuse victim. If you've been an abuse victim of multiple people or one person only has been continuously abusing you for a long time, you develop a muscle memory, response memory, psychological response, everything related to that abuse depending on your personality and your level of abuse and other factors. So that muscle memory a victim can develop. That's why a muscle memory and also intuitive memory of how abusers patterns are, even when other people who have never been abused will not figure it out about an abuser. A person who has been abused heavily but not abused enough to have lost all their mental faculty, they can become a very balanced and astute observer and accurate determiner of where actual abuse is happening, how actual abuse is happening, and also help and work with people in the legal system, financial system, to help them identify where abuse related conditions are prevalent in someone's life. Likewise, and I'm not saying that all abuse victims will be able to do that. Which abuse victim will be able to do that? One whose life was, despite being destroyed, still at a stable level enough, or who had managed to do many practices to keep themselves stable despite a lot of abusive conditions happening in their life. Same way, a person who is a abuser, they also are developing their muscle memory. So abuser also doesn't become a cold calculating abuser the first time they abuse someone. The first time they abuse someone and they get away with it, that can create a high in them. Abuse can be like an addiction also for an abuser. So Ted Bundy, he was actually addicted to murdering multiple women, and he got addicted to, hooked on to murdering multiple women or abusing multiple women or using his skills in trapping women to consider himself as a frail person, and then after trapping them, then he got into doing these abusive things. Why? Because he continuously, how a muscle memory develops for you to do a normal skill like counting a pill in a pharmacy, or a singing person becoming a singing prodigy as a child or as an adult. All these things, whatever takes you a great skill to develop, abuse is also a skill that a person can end up developing. And abuse, murder, serial abusers, serial rapists are those kind of people, and they become those kind of people because it is very if they are highly more intelligent than their victims, if many people around them are unaware about how they are doing their abuse, they are like a magician. Some people are like a magician. If you have read the book of human bondage, that and that author's many other books, I think one of his books name is The Magician. I'm forgetting this because it's been decades since I read this author's books, and it gave me a very creepy feeling reading that author. I'm 100% sure even that author or someone associated with that author was a great abuser, or the author was abused by someone, and then in the future he himself became an abuser too, because the patterns he developed describes in Of Human Bondage and the book The Magician both have indicators of abusive personalities. The cold calculating, covert, manipulative abusers patterns are described in that book. And not just in that book, there are many books like that. I hate reading such books. That's why I quit reading the author's books. After reading a few of his books, it got me into a great phase of feeling very depressed, because if you are a very energetically attuned person or empathetically or intuitively attuned person to these things. You do not gravitate or enjoy reading about these experiences. I do not enjoy narrating about these experiences. But what I do enjoy is if I can end up catching someone who has been abusive, and I understand they are abusive, that is the part that brings me satisfaction. Obviously, because if I have continuously been abused by people and they have not yet been now categorized as abusers simply because to the outside world their abuse is not evident, or even if their abuse is evident, there are social or socioeconomic or financial conditions that still lets away abuser get away with their patterns of abuse, then there is a void that has been created in my heart, in my life, as well as in the world, a void and darkness that the world is enabling, which shouldn't be enabled, because these abusers also equally possible to be eliminated from the world when you do not allow for the circumstances or enable a abuser to get away with their abuse. That is the only time you can create a society where these abusive actions will not propagate and escalate into something more greater than what it should be. Because some darkness is allowed by God in our world, not because that darkness that is allowed is supposed to be just a darkness to help us in contrasting something, understanding the value of something beautiful. But that darkness, when it continuously escalates into a repeating pattern of abuse, is the time when that darkness has to be destroyed. And that destruction can't happen if enough people are not awakened to what needs to be destroyed within them, in their lives, in their patterns, as well as outside them, in outside life of other people as well. So it's a false paradigm if there are so many all these aphorisms or phrases that people who are motivating other people, motivational people, have come up with all these phases. That there's this phase which really annoys me, that earlier I wanted to change the world, now I'm only ready to change myself. It's a good phrase to have when if while changing the world you were not successful in changing the world and you are getting tired while changing the world. If you focus on yourself, it is a good thing. But for someone opposite of you, like me, I never wanted to change the world. I was never interested in changing the world. I just wanted to live and let live in life, but live and let live according to the conditions, ideal conditions that should exist on earth. That was my motto and goal in the past with any people I have coexisted with in the past. Any people in my videos I am categorizing as an abuser of some kind, or a narcissistic personality type, or a manipulator of some kind. All of those people, when I went into those relationships, when I loved them as a parent or a family, I didn't love them assumed the first day I interacted with them that, oh, this person is an abuser, or this personality trait is an abusive trait. But now it has become a prominent part of my brains, because I have become now like a sorting hat kind of a person in recent years, which is very annoying also, because I do not want to have those thoughts where I'm becoming like a sorting hat, judging someone or ascribing a label to someone. I do not want to ascribe those labels to anyone. But when it has become a very strong pattern in them, at that time you have to ascribe this. You can't say Ted Bundy wasn't a abuser or rapist of women, and people when they met Ted Bundy when he was a younger teenager, at that time, if he had not abused anyone, if he had not done anything to anyone, you can't label him as an abuser. But the moment he killed his first victim, he has become an abuser and a rapist and a killer, right? So at that time, if you don't label him, are you judging him, or is it the truth about him that he has become the murderer? What you cannot judge is spiritually. I will talk about these things a little bit later, because I am also still figuring out the spiritual element related to labeling someone who is a abuser, or who is a repeat rapist or repeat murderer, or repeatedly gone away with doing some crime that other people are not understanding that they are getting away with. Because that getting away is a problem zone. You cannot continue. Imagine now, if a person like Ted Bundy, not just imagine, of all the women he raped and killed and murdered, of some of those women have given birth to children of his. Okay, and the women who escaped might have given birth to children of his. Those children do not know they have Ted Bundy's genes. Their grandchildren might not know they have Ted Bundy's genes. But those children and grandchildren, if they do have Ted Bundy's genes, they also have the capacity to become a murderer like him. And they don't become a murderer like him just because they have the genes of that person, but they can become that murderer if along with the genes they had the same mental health problems, social health problems, and the capacity to get away with the murder. All the murderers of the world, that's why only prison systems exist, justice system exists, because the feminine energy inside of humans is meant to check anything that should be checked in the world that is not beneficial for us or that is harmful for us. This is how the human basic body's biology also works. In my body, if there is something harmful that will cause long-term harm in my health, I have so many systems created by God. I have been given all these systems in my body, like the elimination system. One of its path is path of eliminating toxic substances is done by the liver. So the liver helps in the elimination process. Our gastrointestinal tract helps in the elimination process, because while I am digesting food, after digesting that food, when the digestion is happening, the enzymes are breaking down the food into smaller bits, and after it has been broken down into smaller bits of different amino acids and other substances, the thing that is beneficial for my health is supposed to be absorbed by my blood, but the things that are not beneficial, that are crap in the food I'm consuming, is going to be excreted out in the form of poop. Now, if the level of crap in the food, like the level of toxins, harmful things, harmful things that I am not observing is harmful, I have not understood might be harmful, but does that mean that if I don't understand and if I don't observe, or if I don't know what is harmful to my body will stop its basic functionality? No, my body will continue doing that basic functionality. That if I am eating a bowl of food, and in that bowl of food, if 50% of the contents are crap for my body, 50% of it, ideally, when my body is in a highly balanced functional status, it will excrete it out in the form of poop if it is a solid material that was contaminated in it. If there was some liquid material or water soluble material contaminations present in my food or drinks, how is it going to be ideally eliminated? The liquid elements will be eliminated in the form of sweat or in the form of urine. The other way a liquid can also be eliminated, if it is the oily liquid, is if you have ear wax. Wax builds up in someone's body when a lot of fatty substances are toxic to their body, or they're consuming a lot of fatty, thick, waxy substances. But someone who doesn't eat a lot of, I don't consume a lot of thick, waxy substance like food. So majority of my life, in the 40 years of my life, I have never built up wax in my ears, or only once or twice thick wax like thing has built up in my ears. Most of the other times, because I don't eat very highly toxic waxy food, my ears build up liquidy, oily substances. So but that liquid that is built up is also eliminating out. If I clean up my ears, the reason why it is releasing all these oil via my ears is because that is also one elimination mechanism by my body, something that biologists may not have yet understood about our human body, but intuitively I have started understanding that about my body. That is why also you will see when you are getting an infection now, ENT infection, if you are getting, where lung, ear, nose, throat related infections might be happening to you, in that time also you will see your ears will irritate, you will cough up the extra substance. Mucus is another place where fatty substances and easily trappable substances can be trapped by the gunky, sticky mucus of our created by our respiratory system, and then via the mucus, gunky substance can be excreted out. But when it can only be expelled out, when I allow my body to cough out that, when I expel the mucus from my lungs, that is the moment when any particulate matter like toxin or any sticking any microscopic thing or nanoparticles that I am not understanding is toxic to me will get trapped by the mucus. Similarly, there is the lymphatic system also, which traps. Lymphatic system has macrophages which will trap some of these, or our body's immune system has macrophages. So both our body's immune system present in the blood as well as immune system functions. I am a little poor at understanding the lymphatic system's functionality, but I do understand that many a times when I've consumed something which is toxic to my body, which all the other elimination system is not able to expel out, then the final recourse is by the lymphatic system to try to expel that toxin out of the body. But when my body has continuously been wrecked with a lot of toxins, at that time I'm not able to do the normal functionality, or the normal functionality of the body will slowly start falling down. So this is what is happening to any abused person as well. What I'm describing at the biological level happening to my body is also something that starts happening to a abuse victim at a physical health level, emotional health level, psychological level, financial level, all parameters of health. There are multiple parameters of health. There's social health parameter, physical health parameter, psychological health parameter, emotional health parameter, spiritual health, physical. All these are factors responsible for keeping us at a balanced status of health. But when you're constantly being abused, it is a constant attack on your systems. For someone who is financially abused, the finances are constantly being taken away by their partner or someone they trust. So a family, someone's parents can also financially abuse them. Someone's child can also financially abuse them. Someone's partner can also financially abuse them. Someone, if you trusted your friend enough to help a friend in need, and at that time they came and did something in your house, they could also end up financially abusing you. So there are many fronts at which a person can get, even in a simple financial abuse. Multiple places are there where a highly clever person, highly manipulative person can abuse someone without the person knowing that they are being abused. The only time someone becomes wary of being abused is if you are hyper vigilant about that abuse, because you have been abused in the past by other similar people like them, or when one person has continuously abused you so much that any last drop of even micro level of abuse that is reminiscent of the past abuse triggers you to identify a abusive pattern in someone else. Right? So at that time, when you have reached that level of sensitivity to abuse, or constant abuse has been going on in your life, naturally you understand and develop the skill to understand that another victim's plight as well. So that's why when she's calling into this show for advice, she's asking whether she knows that her husband has emotionally cheating on them, or he might have said he's emotionally cheating, but he could even be physically cheating with her. Whatever it is, he's cheating on her, and he wants to now get away from this 10 years of marriage. He's ready to now have a new victim. Why? Because the abuser also, like, you know how they develop these skills, they also know that this woman is at the point of crashing. He knows that she can't give any more of money than what she has already given. He knows that she has abused him a lot. Many things he has done where they are now looking for a newer victim because they want to test their abuse on whatever it is. Like, the abuser's brain is distorted, very toxic. I do not like examining an abuser's brain, but whenever I get insights about it, it troubles my consciousness, the insights I get, and I do not like verbalizing it also. But right now I'm being forced to verbalize these things because there are many women out there in the world, many men or children also, who have been abused like this, whose abuse must stop. That's why I have had these life experiences and also intuitive experiences about understanding the brain of an abuser, which, if people do not understand, those who are working in the justice system, they will let abuser not only get away with their abuse, the abuser will not face any consequences as a result of the abuse they have done, and they will get access to some easy victims in the future. So this woman asking whether she should tell the new girlfriend or potential future girlfriend and wife of her husband, with whom now she is in the process of doing some divorce like proceedings, At that time, when she's asking whether she should warn that girl, she's asking a very relevant question, because her conscious knows, and at the spiritual, she mentioned spiritual abuse, so at the spiritual level her consciousness is asking whether she should warn that girl. But if you look at the comments, many of the comments in the post, as well as the doctor himself who's advising her, they both have suggested to her that she's in the process of running out of a burning building, like she's herself in a great distress and trouble. So at that time, when she is in distress and trouble, she has to first find safety for herself, and she has a son also, so she has to first find the safe ground for herself and her son. And at that moment, yeah, she can shout at the other woman and say, get away from here, do not marry this person, but that is the only thing she can do. She can't give her detailed explanation, not while she is trying to stabilize herself in life. And which is because, but what she can definitely do, even if she directly doesn't contact that girl, this is where the miracle of God happens. You have to keep the trust and faith in God, pray to God that let that woman escape this abuser sooner than I have been able to escape. You can bring that prayer, like, because she's a spiritual woman, she can bring that prayer in the life of that girl so that she is able to escape the abuser sooner. Second thing she can do is she can tell her story in great detail somewhere, via a book, via a social media post, via a write-up in Reddit or some online portal where people talk about their life challenges. In Quora, she can put it up. There are multiple places in this modern world where she can put up her story, which is what I have been doing for the last 4 years. I didn't know in the last 4 or 5 years whether I will survive through the things that have happened to me in the past, as well as that was happening to me in the present, which was a much more dangerous situation than what I have faced in the past. But my current status of danger, no one around me in my life personally connected to me, or even social and government systems I have tried to access to intimate about the danger level I am at, none of them were awakened to the fact that this is a very dangerous situation. And or even if they were awakened to the fact that it's a dangerous situation, they do not have the capacity to do the right thing to fix that situation. So in all these scenarios, I knew that I was not in a fire. I was actually, part of the situations were like fire, burning building like situation, where I've been in a burning building like situation. All I can do is shout that there is a danger here, report that there is a danger here. But if fire is going on in an area, I am shouting there is fire happening, but rest of the people have somehow become blind to the fact that fire is happening here, immune to hearing about the fire happening here, or become, even though they are not blind, they can see that the fire is happening, even though they can hear that the fire is happening, but they do not have the physical ability to come and put down the fire. Or there is someone who has the ability also to put down the fire, despite that they just don't do that because they are antisocial personalities, and for them seeing someone get tortured is more fun. These are all the scenarios. Or someone who has egoic problems with a person shouting. So if someone shouts, they don't understand that in certain situations you do have to shout. You cannot keep quiet when a dangerous fire like situation is progressing in front of you. So in all these scenarios, people's individual biases, physical incapacity, mental illness or social illness that prevents them from actually intervening to help someone, all of these are responsible for that fire now to escalate into a further fire that will impact their lives also if they live in that area, if that fire has the capacity to burn and have a wide scale impact on that area. So, and this is the same thing that is true not just of fire, of any natural disaster that unfolds in a particular area, any chronic problem that can unfold in a family's life or in someone's personal life. All of them have a trajectory, have a trend, have a marker of where the problem zone is, and there is a right way to intervene if the right interventions are kept in place, kept in check. A thing that can impact mass scale lives can impact only a smaller amount of life when enough people are there to fix that problem, if when it is a complex problem. But if enough people, because with a fire it's not always that you just pour out some foam, or you pour out some sand, or you pour out some water to stop a fire. That was a fire of the last century, in a fire where, when earth was not polluted, you do these three kinds of interventions, or pour down put a blanket, if it is a smaller fire, on someone's body. You put a blanket on them, and that's it. That's the intervention you need to save them. If they have burns, you treat them in a hospital. This was the simplest solution. If the building was burnt, you reconstructed that building. That is the simplest solution of the last century. But in this century, even a fire can have a lot of complex things associated with it. Likewise, and I will not go into the details of fire, I can talk about even fire in a great detail, about what are the elements of this century that makes a fire much more complex than simply putting it off with water. With water, I'll just give a very simple example. Nowadays, because of water pollution in our area, the water bottles that you get, the water you get from your taps, the water you use for drinking, and your filtration system is filtering out the water for you. All these three kinds of water that is easily accessible to someone in their homes can be polluted by a simplest thing like oil. If it is polluted by can be polluted by oil, can be polluted by fire enhancing chemicals. So I have found in our local water supply sometimes kerosene as a byproduct in the water, sometimes alcoholic things in the water, sometimes other chemical substances in the water that can be very easily flammable. And now if I use that water to pour a fire out, all of these substances being flammable or flame enhancing or fire enhancing, do you think if I know that pouring water will stop the fire, will help me now with stopping the fire, if I don't know that the water I am using, which water is the safest water and cleanest water to pour down to douse the fire, and which of the waters in this area are unsafe and it will not be able to douse the fire? So does that make sense? So this is a very simple thing about fire, which, because I am a chemical, I have studied a little chemistry. My chemistry is not great chemistry, but along with chemistry, I was given this intuitive knowledge of understanding when water in this area is polluted with something more than what my visible eye can see. Visibly in this bottle, it looks like this bottle has just H2O in its label. If it is a mineral, also it says with minerals, so that means it has got H2O, but along with some minerals in it. But now if any of the minerals in it were contaminated or cross-contaminated or deliberately contaminated, or the machine in which it is getting filtered has been introduced, some chemicals have been introduced in that machine to keep it clean, and there is chemical contamination from the filtration device itself, all of these now have, or the bottle has now some chemicals in it that is leaching into the water, and that bottle's ingredients have some constituents which are fire enabling. All of these in combination, now someday if I want to douse out a fire also, even if I am aware that this bottle has now contents in it which will, instead of dousing out the fire, cause the fire to go up in an explosion, I can complain about it. I am aware about it. I went and complained about it. But other people, not having the scientific knowledge, intuitive knowledge, their own intuition and science, connecting the dots about intuition and science is really poor. At all those times, I cannot save them. How much ever I shout at them that save yourself, and you will see in the comments also, many women have written or many people have commented that if the husband is a expert manipulator, he would have manipulated and given a story to the new girlfriend that you are the one who is crazy. And after giving that narration and story about you being crazy, that woman will, and when in love, people don't want to believe anything toxic or negative about the person they are in love with. So they will not believe about you and they will continue loving that person. And then what will happen? Only after being abused, only that other person might wake up. And if that person's waking up capacity is too late, in one of the other examples there is this lady who said that she warned her husband's violent husband's next girlfriend about the problem related to the man. That girl didn't believe it. or she actually said that I understand how he is, because maybe he was sexually, maybe he was into BDSM or something, because someone who is very violent with a partner can also be into sexual perverted behaviors. So with that girlfriend possibly was okay with those perverted sexual things, and because she was okay with the perverted sexual things, she just thought maybe the wife was having a problem about the perverted sex, and that's why she was like, she's going to be safe. But she wasn't safe, because he wasn't simply possibly just a person who is physically violent, sexually violent, but also he had other mental illnesses. He could be an antisocial personality, highly intelligent person with a lot of toxic traits that no one else detects except the person who gets abused by them. They can get a glimpse of it, but even if the victim gets a glimpse of one aspect of a person's abuse, some highly intelligent abusers distribute their abuse against different victims. So what was abusive towards the first wife, whatever was, she might have had great boundary that if you have hit me once or twice or 10 times, that is my limit. Because some women will take one hit and leave the spouse. Some women might take 10 hits over 10 years before leaving the spouse. So whatever was her reason for leaving her spouse, she left him. But the other girl couldn't leave him, and she could have had more supportive circumstances in her life for her to leave him. But the other girl couldn't leave that violent spouse, and she's now dead out of some mysterious circumstances. That girl's family suspects that this man is responsible for her death, and they want to recruit the first wife for helping with that. But when can someone help in doing all this? Only when you understand the mindset of an abuser, understand how abusers sometimes have actually very good evidence of what they did to their victim present in their own life. Somewhere in their life there is clue for that abuser. If he has murdered the second wife, there is clue somewhere how he has murdered her. But only a discerning eye can figure out and find the evidence for where that murder happened, how that murder happened. And if people do not believe victims who have gone through abuse, who have the right clinical knowledge or biological knowledge or chemical knowledge, or even have some intuitive support from the universe about dreams, via dreams knowing how a victim was killed or what were the circumstances surrounding their death, even if you have that knowledge, but if no one believes you that you have that knowledge, you cannot help that victim out. Or if this first wife gives also evidence, but no one trusts her evidence because it might be 10 years later, 5 years later, or she never reported the abusive situations of her life in the past, all of which now detracts the investigators if they are not very well versed in understanding abuse, understanding the patterns of a highly sociopathic criminal. Like, because Ted Bundy, not everyone with Ted Bundy's genes are going to be obvious killers of women. They can kill women very subtly, or they don't have that greed of killing hundreds of women or attacking hundreds of women. They are not at the addictive phase of killing. There are many abusers, those who are the cold calculating type of abusers, can wait 10 years to kill their victims slowly over time with certain things that they do to that victim, where the victim may not be aware that something was happening. Even if the victim was aware that something has happened, and if they go and complain to the cops, sometimes it worsens their abuse, because the manipulative abuser, if they are highly intelligent, or even if they also have these, like if I have clear vision like dreams or intuition that this person is abusive, abuser also can have that same intuition about the fact that this person can easily trap me. So because, or this person knows me really well, so I have to kill them. That's why only he possibly killed the second wife, if he has done it, because he knows that the second wife knows even more. He might have done even more worse things to the second wife than the first wife, and the second wife was possibly even ready to go and complain to the police about it, was maybe potentially gathering evidence also about it. But before the evidence could be given out, she died. And because if you have assumed that this person is only a physically violent abuser or a sexually violent one, but you have not figured out that they are also highly intellectual and they can use chemistry and biology related circumstances to create an environmental condition in your home to kill you, they could do that as well. And there's much more other levels of things, like what happened with Giselle. Her husband was giving her drugs. How was he able to give her those drugs that caused her to fall asleep and get raped by so many men? How was he able to do that? Because she trusted him. Because she trusted him, he was easily, and her trust level, even if let's say they were having fights in their relationships like normal couples do, she continuously forgave him, thinking these are just normal couple fights. But in the meanwhile, while she is assuming this is a normal couple fight, where after a fight the husband is forgiving her, he was not forgiving her. He was planning to create more, or he pretended to forgive her, or he was very there. These are all meek kind of abusers. He was likely very meek towards her. Like if she shouted at him that, hey, and she was shouting, why? Because and you have to understand this also, if she is continuously being raped by different men, her emotional body and spiritual body is continuously getting the impact of that rape in her body. How much of a clean circumstance he creates for ensuring that the rape is not happening, it's a violation of a woman's body. A woman's body is designed to only have sex with one man continuously for a while. That is the biological setup a woman needs. And even with the one man, it has to be a healthy man. And all these men are not healthy men, because the moment you are ready to just sleep with someone just for the sake of your sexual perversion and sexual needs, and you are not sex is supposed to be a very sacred act between two human beings. You've violated the sacredness of also sex when you are doing what these men have done to her. So when they are doing this, all at the spiritual level she's getting violated, at the physical level she's getting violated, and her body is now storing all this information in the DNA memory. All this information is getting stored. So because something alien to what is normally supposed to be happening to keep a human being healthy is happening to her, to keep a woman healthy. Many things are needed to keep a woman actually healthy in life. Some that is necessary for the woman to have in her core self as well, but some that is part of women's interaction, any human's interaction with other humans in their life. Those things have to follow a spiritual principle, a natural law, where right interaction and right balanced interaction has to exist with other people. So those people, when they shout at their partner that consciously they may not be aware where the partner did wrong, or the thing that they might be shouting at their partner might seem like a very ridiculous thing, that you brought me a bottled water that doesn't work. Like there are all these videos about Karens, or people who complain a lot about many things. Many of those Karens, you will realize, are likely abuse victims. Some of them are falsely categorized as Karens are typically initially were supposed to be for mocking those women who are spoilt brats. But even in those spoilt brat range of people, and you're mocking a woman for doing that, but women are technically, if you have feminine energy in you, you're technically supposed to complain, because without complaint you can't bring improvement. If I know that this water has some chemicals in it which can lead to enhancing of fire or lead to enhancing of health issues in my body, and if I don't complain to the manufacturer who's making this bottle for me, can ever in the future any change be derived if I don't complain? How will someone find out that something is wrong if people don't complain, if people do not have a response and reaction? Like if this thing is causing irritation in my skin, while let's say I am having some water pollution issues, I'm also using bottled water for showering, and while showering my skin gets completely red and irritated and scaly from the water I use for showering. That also indicates that the water is bad quality. If it is a bottled water company I'm using for showering, I have to complain to the bottled water company. If it is a water that is coming from the tap provided by the municipality, I have to complain to the municipality. But if it is a water that is coming from my underground water supply, what do I have to do? I have to work with my community to ensure that my underground water supply doesn't get polluted. I also have to take active action to ensure that I minimize the water pollution in my area. These are all the ways in which you solve a problem, that you don't want to escalate into a major problem. But if I first don't identify itself that there is a problem here, if I don't criticize it, complain about it, can I or get some pain out of it as a result of that problem happening with me, can ever a change be initiated? But the world has now gone into such a certain places of the world, certain people in the world are so immune or so unaware of the places where complaint is necessary, is relevant, severe complaint is needed, shouting level complaint is needed. That is are the places where people don't understand that when you ignore those things, that is when disaster will strike. There's no other option except disaster now remaining. Complete breakdown of something has to happen when the levels at which simpler level interventions could have fixed a problem, now the problem has escalated in such a way that you can't fix it with the simple things, because at the simple stages people were immune to understanding why they were getting criticized, understanding that after why criticism is also an important part of life, why not all criticism is meant to destroy you, but it destroys, a criticism becomes a destructive criticism only at the moment when that thing needs to be destroyed. These are all the reasons. If a balanced, sane interaction is happening in anyone's life, all these elements would be present. I hope this made sense. So when a woman goes and now complains to the police about a domestic violence incidents that happened in the past and a domestic violence incidents that is happening in their present, and actually the present domestic violence scenario might be at a smaller level than the past incident, but by right now, if 10 years she has been in a marriage, in 10 years, not just the very easily provable domestic violence situation has happened with her, in the 10 years such micro levels of violence has happened in her life or abuse has happened in her life, that all of them together is a great thing for her. She just doesn't have the energy now to carry on anymore. And not only does that she not have the energy to carry on anymore, in this scenario the guy was asking her, you should get some monetary compensation from your spouse, but this guy who's giving her advice is a good guy. He doesn't understand the mentality of men who do not want to pay at all or fairly or justly for anything. But there are men who do not want to pay at all. There are men who will not pay justly. There are men who will, if you force them also to pay, they will now seek revenge on you for the payment that a world or a judge has instructed them to pay someone. So for her, I don't know what level of she needs. I would ask that woman actually more deeper questions. If I am a judge, if I am someone trying to give her financial advice, if someone I am her lawyer, more deeper questions are needing to be asked of that woman to judge and gauge what level abuser is her spouse. Because if her spouse, he might have gone and put all their money in debt, whether he's lying about that, that is also something she might have to know. But it is an immaterial thing to her whether he's lying about the debt or if it is a true debt, when that abuser is the personality type who, even if the judge gives you a law that you have to pay $1,000 for child support, if he is the kind who doesn't want to pay, or who would rather let his wife and sons suffer, he will not pay any money at all. Secondly, this is one aspect. Like, there's a lot of things related to financial things only I can talk about, and I can go talking on, and maybe in a next video I will address this element in a deeper scale. But in this video I'm trying to address all the points which need to be addressed for her to actually fix her life problem. If he is the kind who will never pay anything to her, who even if judge instructs to pay will not pay, or he will get mad now if he is instructed to pay, all of them will additionally add to her abuse even after she gets divorced. This is what people don't understand, that divorce can break down that relationship where the man at least has only that much ego that if divorce has happened, he is ready to let go of the victim. But there are vindictive men or women who even after divorce has happened will not let go of their victim, who there are mentally, intellectually very highly intellectually, power wise, mentally, financially very powerful people who just simply have this major ego of not wanting to lose. And as a result, if any element in their life looks to them as a loss, they will vindictively and coldly and calculatingly ensure that they get back what they are instructed to give to someone else. Those kind of personalities also exist in the world. And that's why for some women, just simply leaving without monetary compensation is a better route when safety is a concern. Because like when he mentioned, he actually intuitively understood her problem, but not logically he hasn't understood the extent of her problem. Because when he said you're running out of a burning building with a child, you can't you can maximum shout at her, but that's it. You have to wait to give her any input about this marriage related issues, which is true, because she has to first run. And while running, if a part of her gets burnt also, because when you're running from a fiery, like really health harming situation and a really health harming spouse, you will have burn like injuries. You will have after inhaling the smoke, like how from a burnt building, these are the two obvious places a victim will have injuries. Or while running, if something falls on you, you will have injury from that. While running, if you stumbled and a stone or a broken window or something, shards have entered your body, all these things that could harm you while you were running, all of these are also now going to impact your future health. And slowly you will have to treat each of these elements. And only when can you treat all of these elements? When a person who's treating you is aware, a person who's wanting to help you is aware that what are the other places where while running you got injured, while being in that home when smoke was getting you have inhaled, your son has inhaled. So, and the treatment has to happen to the woman and the son. Someone willing to treat them has to be there. Someone willing to treat them at the right appropriate levels they need treatment have to be there. This is what I'm describing about a burning building, is the same scenario of a abused woman's life. When she leaves the abusive situation, all these parameters have to be in place. Otherwise, if she just if she was a very easy abuse victim, meaning all her abuse was physical and financial abuse or verbal and financial abuse, and that's it, all she needs is a little calming down space, a little restful space, do a little yoga, do a little therapy, go and eat good nutritious food, work for yourself, do all the basic things. These are all the things women who used to be abused in the past century, if you had just taken them out of an abusive situation, that was enough to ensure a better life for that woman. But this was a past century's paradigm, 100-year back women's lives paradigm, 200, 300, 400-year back women's paradigm, where if her family, if her friends, if someone in a domestic abuse hotline, if the cops, if they are just taking away women out of that situation, that's all that she's needed. And given her some steps to financially stabilize herself, given her some compensation from the husband to ensure that because of the result of the abuse she got some compensation, and she needs stability, right, to take care of her son, and a lot of other financial responsibility she has to take over now. So all of which, but here also people don't understand this, and I'm saying this because when someone is very financially abusive, or as she's mentioned, her husband has a lot of debt, if someone is using away a lot of your money and giving it away for debt, I actually feel if she leaves this abusive marriage and goes into a different life, she will not be in debt. She feels she was responsible for the debt that her husband has accrued, when if she was not the overly spending kind, the spendthrift kind, the kind who wastes money on luxurious stuff than needed stuff for living, if she is that personality type, she's actually more than likely not going to be in debt. And she will also see that in fact without the husband in her life, she's ending up saving a lot of money also, because she might have gone years and years, when if 10 years a man has controlled your finances, it means for 10 years in her life she has known how to get with less money in her life. And if she has known how to get by with less money access in her life, she when she's separated from him, her money will be enough money for her to take care of her son and herself. So she shouldn't if her lawyer is telling her, or if her instinct and intuition is telling her not to get money from him, she should do that. But herein, another thing I want to introduce here for judges and lawyers is that, and even this therapist said, and she is admitting that she will have to co-parent with such a husband. My understanding of such abusers, because I've met such abusers and I have lived with such abusers for a long time, so I know that how dangerous it is to give back a child to a abuser. Because if your abuser is abusing you at multiple levels of abuse, they are also very likely to put as a result of the resentment of the divorce, even while in a new relationship, for the first 1-2 years maybe in a new relationship, they may not abuse the child, but after the rosy phase of that relationship has waned, and the abusers, because abusers are very much ruled by darkness filled thoughts and all the darker experiences of life which none of us want to explore or engage in, but they find it thrilling. They have some genes in them that causes them to do exactly the opposite of what normal humans are supposed to do. So as a result of that, they will abuse the child. They will not they will manipulate the systems also to pretend as if they are loving the child, when abuse of the child will be happening behind the scenes. So as a result, this understanding, whether this husband is like that, I don't know, but some abusers can be potentially like that. So that development of that understanding needs to happen in the justice system, in the legal system, in the systems that are taking care of a person, that have been created by humanity to ensure that greater harm doesn't exist. Every principle of life is in medical fraternity there is a saying of do no harm, but the same do no harm principle is actually a basic principle of life for every one of us. In every interaction you have in life, your main principle that should be ruling our life with anyone we are interacting with, we are consciously aware that our choices will impact them. At that point of time, you should be responsible for doing no harm. So if she, while exiting the marriage or after having exited her marriage and after settling down, after divorcing from this man, then sends an anonymous letter to the girl, or ends up meeting the girl and telling her what was going on in her past, her due diligence is just giving the heads up to the girl via a phone conversation, via a meeting, via a letter, or via some indirect communication with another person. But it would be better if she directly approaches that girl and tells her, because her intuition is right, that girl needs to be warned. She may not believe it. 90% of the time that girl will not believe it, and that is okay for her not to believe, but because of the heads up, she will at least recognize the symptoms of abuse sooner. So that's why her telling her is, or her intuition wanting her to tell that girl, is not a wrong thing. Only thing is, when she should tell her is something she has to decide. And final thing, if your person is very financially, if the person who's the abuser is financially, psychologically, sexually abusive, manipulative, coercive, has manipulated someone's brains a lot of times to manipulate them into doing things they don't want to do. All of these things are prevalent in that relation. Like a really high level toxic Ted Bundy level criminal is actually your spouse. In those women's cases, I would also suggest, don't get the financial access from them. Get a lump sum amount rather than getting them to pay you once a month, once a year, once a week, like alimony. Because if they have access to where you're going after even if you've left that abuser, because of where your money is going in the bank and your access to that bank account, when you are accessing that money, they can trace you and get back into your life to create havoc in your life. I'm talking about those high level twisted criminals, real distorted criminals, real criminals who do not allow the victim to escape even after divorce has happened. Because those level abusers do exist. They do not give peace to their victims, especially if you are monetarily connected to them, and that's why you shouldn't have that monetary connection with them. I've mentioned in my past videos how I have done all the stupid things that I could have done. I've done each and everything wrong in my life, which has led to a financial mess that I don't even know is happening behind my back. But universe has intuitively guided me, and the patterns of abusers itself has guided me to know that some financial glitch and major financial disruption around my financial accounts are happening, which I have no knowledge about physically, because I'm not operating those accounts, but because those accounts were created jointly with abusers. They have used my account, my name is attached to some some illegal stuff or things that I don't even know what they are tied to. But all I know is there are things going on in the background where, because of the level of abuse, because of the level of danger I was in, I had to quit that life. I had to just leave with whatever I can leave. Like when fire is going on, I will just leave, right? I'm not going to stay there in a fiery situation to be burnt by it. So I left, and I still left with some burns, but it will not be a whole 80%, 90% burning of my body, or 90%, 80% harm of my body when I'm leaving. The sooner I leave, lesser the harm that is there. But that is just the physical harm to my body, and if I'm living with some child, that is the physical harm that has gone on with me. But if that building fell apart or partly fell apart, and insurance things were done, and the building was co-owned by two partners, I might have got also some insurance money from that. But that money, will it come to me? If there was a joint account with that spouse, the insurance settlement went to the spouse, even though the joint account might be in my name. Even if I am the primary account holder of that name, whatever compensation was received, I didn't get the compensation, even though technically the compensation should have come to me. Legally it should have come to me. Legally it seems like it is coming to me, but it is not coming to me, because it's going into an account that is not mine. Or even if my name is there in that account, I have no access to the account when I ran. And after I ran, I never wanted to look back and have a financial tie-up with that person. So I've never operated that account, never looked into what is going on with that account. Even if I look into what is going on with that account, the more I know, actually more trouble might arise. Because let's say some money was given and my spouse is involved in some illegal activities, my knowledge of those illegal activities will put me more in trouble than they might think that you were accessory to it, when I was not accessory to it. I just intuitively know that something wrong is being done by that account. Which, when in my personal case, why I'm mentioning this is because in my personal case, I do have these joint accounts with these abusers of mine, who have been some covert abusers, some long-term manipulative abusers, some abusers of the kind where understanding that abuse was going on took me 10 years to understand. And with all these joint accounts, whatever they have done with that money, I can't do anything about what they have done. I didn't have control of it, even if I was supposed to be the primary account holder. And even if I did have some control, semblance of control also in those accounts, if the legal system, justice system, social system, banking system doesn't understand how, when some accounts like this have been created, how to break down those accounts, how to take off the innocent persons away from the accounts dealings. There are things, I don't know how to explain this, but basically there are many innocents who are trapped by their spouses into like this debt also that this girl is talking about. She needs to actually figure out a way, like if her debt is about debt that her husband has accrued in her name, meaning like how the lease of this house was in her name, he could have taken a bank loan in her name and she signed it because she trusted that individual, or she did whatever he was telling her to do. She has continuously possibly done whatever he has told her to do. But if she did it because she had no other choice, she was coerced into doing it, she was sexually manipulated, emotionally and psychologically manipulated into doing it. She was also, maybe there are women victims who are also hypnotized by people to do certain things. All of these things are also parts in which a person can end up being a role player in a crime that has been done. So he accrued debt, he might have taken thousands of dollars of money from a bank in her name, and she thinks she should accrue that debt. that is the place where now I want the judge to intervene, because a lawyer also can't technically do anything about it, but the justice system and banking system can do something about it. Because if the man is the one who is spending all the money related to the money that was debt that was accrued, then the man should be responsible. Why should the woman be responsible when the woman has not even used a single dollar, or maybe only used 1%, 2% of the money that was ever present in that account and related to that debt? Does that make sense? These are the places where justice system, legal system, banking system, people working with abuse victims need to work, because you otherwise end up enabling the abuse that the husband has done. If the systems don't support the victim, now she is going to accrue a debt that was not even used by her. So why should she legally be responsible for it just because her name is there in that debt? These things I want people to reflect on. There was another case in this John Deloney show only, of a man who was knowing that his son is being abused by his wife, or something is going on in his wife's home. Maybe the wife is not the primary abuser, but some people associated with the wife is the primary abuser of his child. Now, knowing that she is abuse is going on in the child's life when he goes to that parent, this thing also needs to be investigated by the legal and justice systems, and revisiting of co-parenting rights also is something people should understand. Because if someone is mentally abusive, sexually abusive, socially abusive, and psychologically abusive, or enables abusers to come into the child's life at those time points every few years, I think justice system, even if initially you weren't aware that the wife is an abuser, or maybe the wife is not the abuser, the wife's father is the actual abuser, wife's boyfriend is the actual abuser, whatever it is in that person's case or in this scenario also, because knowing that this husband is an abuser, co-parenting rights shouldn't be given to abusers. I feel a visitation right should be given, and a visitation and co-parenting right which is in the balance thing and not something that has been manipulated. Because I also know a story of a person who I didn't know was poisoning me and drugging me, but later on I figured out that person had poisoned me and drugged me, and meaning she had some possible illegal access to certain drugs or legal access to certain drugs because of some injuries she might have had in the past. Whether she had illegal or legal access, I don't know, but she did drug me. I didn't understand I was being drugged at that time. Only on self-reflection I realized she had drugged me. And she is also a little bit of a manipulative personality. She is also financially very high IQ, financially very good with finances, and that person created, I believe now, at that time I believed her story where she said that her husband had shot at her and her husband had and she got also all the, because he had a shooting, actual shooting was involved. Naturally the legal system and justice system believed her and gave her the rights of the child. But if she had manipulated her husband into doing this via the things that she knows personally about the husband, and she had drugged the husband or psychologically done something to cause this incidents to happen, which covert narcissistic abusers do, that if they know there is a pain point in your body, that this thing, if they do XYZ steps, after that they will piss you off because they know you have the capacity to be pissed off. So if she has placed all those psychological manipulative factors in her life which led to his shooting her, and he could very well have had a very real logical reason for, even though shooting is a very heinous act, he shouldn't have shot her, and because he had a consciousness, he didn't hit her actually. So I believe that his case also should be revisited by the people who gave complete custody of their child. And actually I also got guided by the universe and by her own choices to think that that child is actually neither hers nor her husband's, possibly, or it's only one of their biological child. What is the truth? That also needs to be examined, because if that child is neither both of these parents' childs, if both of these parents are high level psychological or mentally ill or some other things are going on in their life, I feel for the safety of that child or safer future of that child, finding who is their biological parent might also be a new way in which justice system can work. Because according to me, I'm narrating this incident, and I know that person will be super pissed off if she finds my video, but that person had asked me to drop her off in a particular place the day she had drugged me. And at that time when she drugged me, I didn't know that she had drugged me, but I had felt very groggy that day, and I had woken up a little later than I usually wake up. And then because she was my friend, I trusted her. I didn't have any reason to suspect that she's drugging me, but two instances she had drugged me: once in her own home when she ate food in her own home, and second time she could have just put something in my home's water supply while we are sharing a drink or something, or while we had gone out for eating somewhere she might have put something. I don't know what she did to drug me, but I know I was drugged. And then she had taken me to a place which was very near to I had later researched what was going on, where she had asked me to take. She didn't tell me to take her in front of the building she's going to enter, which by itself I found very suspicious. Why isn't she telling me to drop her off at the place she needs to be dropped off? But later on, via some intuitive things, I understood that she had asked me to drop her off near a fertility clinic. So imagine now, I don't know if this has happened to me. This is a possibility that could have happened to me. But if she has drugged me, she could have drugged me and then extracted eggs from me. And then, because if she doesn't have any eggs, she used those eggs to become pregnant, and then after becoming pregnant, or like used a surrogate to because her body structure is such that she likely doesn't have eggs in her body, or is infertile, or doesn't even have a uterus to give birth to a child. All these things are possible based on her body structure itself. I can tell you these three things are possible for her. So that's why she would have taken someone else's egg, and she could have used a surrogate to pretend pregnancy. Or if her body did indeed she did give biological birth to that child, if she was just simply infertile, she could still have used someone else's eggs for wanting a child. And because all of these things she used to gain her US green card, and this is something people need to understand now. Because firstly, if that child was conceived using my eggs, I didn't give her any consent. No legal consent was given to her. Secondly, even if she has some paper that says that she has legal consent from me, which she could have derived from some means or the false papers or whatever, even then, if that child is found out to be biologically mine or some other woman's, maybe she has done it to some other woman and extracted her eggs, whoever's that child is biologically, and their eggs were taken without their knowledge, that is also a crime that has occurred. Finally, if that child is biologically someone else's child, and in an abusive situation where both parents who were thought to be their biological parents are not really their biological parents at all, and someone else is their biological parents, and if their biological parents are much more socially stable, emotionally stable, psychologically stable, financially stable, or just simply because they are the biological parents, they might also be intuitively more attuned with that child's emotional needs and care and caretaking, shouldn't the biological parent have a right to such a child that was retrieved and conceived via deception, manipulation, and abusive patterns that the person didn't know that abuse was going on? I didn't know this was going on when this incident happened in my life. This last tail end incident that I'm talking about, I didn't realize that it has happened until after almost 10 years have passed, or 5-6 years have passed. And in all those years, because I was on and off friends with that person, I have found many instances where she has been abusive towards her child. She's not a good caretaker of her child. She is ready to and willing to leave. She was ready and willing for just simply going for partying with her friends, and the fact that she was not ready to take the emotional responsibility of the child. She was ready to leave the child with abusive people. And not only that, but I at that time I didn't know that that child might be biologically related to me or biologically related to someone else than that friend. But if that child is biologically related to someone other than that woman, I can guarantee tell you other people would be a better caretaker of that child. And that's why I'm making this video. And because I have no way, there is no legal system created, there's no social system created, there's no financial system created, there is no investigation system created right now on earth to investigate all of these in the right way. And I do not even live in the country where this has happened. So how do I access the justice of that system's that country's system when I'm not even living in that country? There is no way to report these crimes. That's why I'm being forced to make a video about it, rather than and I'm not naming the people involved, but I know 90% my intuition says this is what has happened. And that's why her husband was pissed off, because he found out that she might have taken his sperm so that baby could biologically be his baby, or she might have taken his and some other people's sperms as well, because she doesn't know which will be a viable sperm. All she wanted was to have a baby to prove that she got conceived a baby in the marriage, and she could have lied throughout the court proceedings by omission possibly, but it is a lie. Everyone will presume if you got pregnant in a marriage that that child is your husband's. And she could have lied and also manipulated and gaslighted the whole thing by saying that she has used my or some other friend's eggs and the husband's sperm. And the husband could have had discussions with her in the past, because I know that the husband did have some mental health illness issues, and he could have had these mental health related concerns that he doesn't want to pass on to his next generation, as a result of which he might have explicitly told his wife in the relationship that he doesn't want to conceive a biological child. Maybe he was okay with adopting a child, maybe he was also okay with going into surrogacy like things, but using someone else's sperm. All these things he was maybe planning and discussing with her, but that was not something she wanted to do for her manipulative reasons, or the thing that whatever it was the reason, she might have manipulated him into, or forced him, or he was possibly not wanting pregnancy at that time at all, because they were in some financial challenging phases of life. So whatever is the reason, these rights of the husband also has to be looked into. He was injustice at that time. If someone manipulates you extremely over multiple levels, like disrespect was present, covert manipulation was present, that her sperm was taken without his permission, or other things, all other forms of manipulation where she got pregnant when he had not given permission for her to become pregnant, and she went around and manipulated the system into doing all these things. At that time, if he was indeed angry enough to shoot at her, did he have a real relevant human cause for shooting at her? And if actually speaking, she was also manipulating the pregnancy itself, and it was a surrogate mother who gave birth to that child, not only has he manipulated she manipulated the husband, she's also manipulated the whole system to pretend as if she was pregnant when she was, 90% my intuition says she was not pregnant at all. She doesn't even have a uterus to be pregnant. She doesn't have the body type of a woman who can have a uterus to be pregnant as well. So these things people need to investigate. These things are necessary for justice system, legal system to investigate about complex cases of abuse, about complex allegations, and about understanding the high level criminal capacity some people have the potential to hold. The last few minutes of what I have said might seem very fictional to you because you've not experienced this experience in your life. But this is the reality of what I went through, and that woman's husband has gone through, and also that child is going through. So 3 people's lives are tied to this one woman's couple of steps of seemingly very highly improbable crimes, but which have all been possible simply because other people will never initiate any of these things that I'm mentioning in these last few minutes of the video, but a highly toxic human, or a highly manipulative human, highly desperate human, or whatever is going on in their mental makeup, distorted human that causes them to make these choices, do make these weird choices. And I have only been guided by God, so people may trust or not trust me, but I was guided by the God to understand that there's a high likelihood that that child could be mine or some other woman's. That, and he looks also, his personality also, I've only interacted with the child, not even direct interaction. He said something to his mom and his mom said something to me, but only in that one interaction I understood that this child is possibly he has patterns of behavior that is not match his parents, and that is also a very core factor people can use to at least get the DNA test done to ensure whether he's really her child or not. And the husband should revisit husbands like these, or the wives like the one I began this video with. Anyone who is going through who is being manipulated by covert abuser, highly intellectually capable abusers who have controlled someone's money and life and other choices in life in a way where other people don't understand that these kind of controls can happen to people, but it does happen to people. And when it has happened to them, they didn't have the agency to make the wiser choices, right choices, balanced choices. Or even if they had taken the agency to make the right and balanced choices, sometimes they are categorized as the villain when they were just simply highly messed up and fucked up by the person who's manipulating them, that they had no choice but to have a heavy outpouring of anger against that person. And that outpouring of anger was valid, and he didn't kill her or harm her, and he had at the last minute something told him not to shoot her, so the shot didn't go through her, so she was not injured. And I'm 100% sure she was not traumatized, because if you're faking, like let's say I am triggering you to hit me, you think I'm going to be traumatized by it. If inadvertently out of the blue your husband hits you, that woman is the person who is traumatized, who is a real domestic violence victim. But if you have planned in a certain way that someone should hit you because you want that, she didn't know that he might, she might have had the shock of the fact that he shot a gun at her, which could have been a shock because she's an Indian from India, and in India guns are not a common thing in Indian households. So her being shot by a gun could have been a shocking thing, so that could have happened. But her manipulating him into a toxic response towards her, because she had mentioned to me that her husband had one time tried to strangle her. So because that that pattern was there in her marriage, so she knew that if she gives him all these after her manipulations, if she tells him either the partial truth or the entire truth of what she has done, he will naturally get angry and attack her. And she was likely also recording that incidents, because this is also something I was guided by the universe, that she likely recorded the whole conversation she was having with the spouse. And people who are expert at understanding when someone is a psychological manipulator or abuser needs to be involved in this case is revisitation, if a revisitation of this case is going to happen soon or is in the process of happening. Because all these are also important crucial factors, because when someone is a desperate victim, their patterns of abuse are very different from when someone is pretending to be a victim. And this discernment, all justice system people, legal system people who are going to assign child caretaking rights to someone, they need to revisit, they need to understand the complexity of such things, because some people are not the normal average victim, or neither are they the normal average criminal pretending to be a victim. So I hope this makes sense, and this women's co-parenting rights should not be given to her husband as far as I can tell. But I do want people to ask her deeper questions to get the judges, and these questions they should ask her out of the hearing capacity of the husband, to gauge the truth from her, because in front of the husband she might be hesitant. If the husband coerces her in some way, she might not tell the truth. And also, if the husband is highly manipulative, he will prevent the truth also from getting into the judge's hearing as well. So all of these can be the danger potential for, and this is why we need the right intervention, quick intervention, absolutely very finely tuned and discernment filled interventions for certain people who are victims of highly clever, intellectually over the cleverness level than normal humans, intellectually very capable humans who are, and also socially very distorted criminals. These are the kind of people who need the kind of intervention where, if right intervention doesn't arise in their life with or without the abuser, both ends up being heavily filled with abusive circumstances, not because they did anything wrong, but because majority of the things while they were in the marriage and while they got out of the marriage were stacked up against them to bring them the right justice, bring them the right resolutions, bring them a actually stable and abuse free life. I hope this made sense. If anyone has questions, comments, would you like to connect with me, please drop a question, comment here, or connect with me via my social media pages. Right now, Instagram is not working, but you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on also the email that I have posted in my about me information page. So I hope this was beneficial to you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.